So here is a instructional video for learning to draw part 2. I know you guys have been spending a couple days drawing objects that are kind of in that outline, contour line drawing form. I'm going to add an extra step where the images that you're going to see are now actual objects. Right now we're not worrying about any shading, any value, anything like that, but just really studying an actual object in front of you and how you can identify those basic shapes, and now thinking about forms. When I say forms, we're talking about the 3D aspect of a shape. So to start with, you know, you have your circle. Now, usually if I add shading, this will look more like a sphere, but that is the 3D form of a circle. We're not worrying about the value in the shading right now. That'll come a little bit later. That's coming soon. So really, I mean, your sphere, if you wanted to make this circle a sphere, you could think of it, for right now, maybe you put what's called cross contour lines. That's a way for it to appear rounded. Otherwise, if it was flat, the lines would be flat straight across. But to get the illusion that it's a sphere, you can put a few cross contour lines to show the roundness of the object. Squares become cubes. There's a couple different ways to draw cubes. We're going to be talking about perspective soon as well. So sometimes students have questions about how to draw a cube. There's a couple different ways. This is like more like 1 point, 2 point, and if you're like, what is this 1 point, 2 point she's talking about? We'll be talking about that too. We're kind of building up to that. But yeah, you know, just thinking about more of a box cube form, instead of a triangle, becomes a cone. So still have the sides, but then it becomes round. We also have things like cylinders. If you were thinking before, hey, more like a rectangle, now you may notice that there's more of a form. You're probably going to see the top or the bottom. So if this is the top of this kind of cylinder form, an ellipse at the top, and then the bottom gets rounded. Kind of looks like a tin can or a marshmallow. If we're seeing the bottom of it, if you turned it upside down, you know, we wouldn't see the top and the bottom of something. So one or the other, but yeah, an ellipse, and then this gets rounded at the bottom. All right, so how do we take shapes and forms? And you can use them interchangeably, but this is gonna help you get kind of that 3D look before you start shading. So let's kind of take a look at that. So just like before, kind of go at your own pace. I'm not interested in how many you complete, as long as you're participating and just really getting that practice. That's most important to me. And I think you guys did an excellent job the last couple days. I was pretty proud of you. So keep going. Take your sketchbook paper, divide it into 4. My lines are way off, but that's okay. All right, so before, the lines were kind of there for us to follow. Now we really have to study the form a little bit in a different way. And like I said, we're still identifying the shapes, but you can also think about them as forms. You know, and it's common to use it interchangeably. So, you know, you might think, hey, I'm gonna start with a circle, just like I did before. Mrs. Schultz taught me that, a circle, it's closest to that. But then you'll notice it's not a perfect circle. It comes in a little bit. I can see the top of it. So now I'm seeing the side and the top. And this leaf here, it's a little on the more flat side, but I can tell that it's turned because, you know, if it was flat, it would be symmetrical on both sides. So I'm seeing part of it one side, and then the other side is probably curving under. So these are all little things that you're gonna be probably thinking in your head, how do I make this circle now look like an apple? And this is where you still start with that basic shape or form, or I should say the shape, but then making it look more like a form, thinking, well, I see the top, kind of like that ellipse that I told you about. And this is where your line work. And you don't have to have things like, when we go to draw a little bit more, don't feel like you always have to have everything outlined, because we know everything, and you know, life is not actually outlined, but this is just kind of getting where for you to practice the drawing, like I said, and identifying those basic shapes and forms now. just thinking, I see a line back here. I see kind of like an edge line here. So yeah, we're still studying the edge lines. My apple gets a little bit smaller as it comes in. I still have that circle, but it's just kind of a guide to what it's going to fit in now that I can study the line work a little bit more. And it curves out here, so this is where if you wanted to put some cross contour lines, you know, you could just kind of the stem before, probably, you know, just thinking of drawing it like a square, but I can now see that I may see like the little bit of the top of it, just like I do the top of the apple, drawing a cylinder. That is, proportion-wise, is way off, so let's just ignore that, right? And then your leaf. I've mentioned the word organic or freeform. These are used interchangeably, but they mean the same thing. So if I said draw a leaf, it being an organic or freeform, you're not going to know the exact shape of the leaf versus something geometric like a square or a circle. We know the dimensions and the angles of that. So just kind of studying, like I said, thinking about that shape and the angles this way before I can put the details, okay? You may erase some of the lines if you feel like it's a little bit messy and you feel like it's a little unclear. Remember, we're still working on that line work, that keep it soft for a sketch, and then when you're feel confident about the proportions and the lines that you want to keep, you can use a little bit of a heavier line. So I have a pear, and just like before, thinking about, well, hey, I'm seeing a rounded circular form, a sphere, right? And then the triangle. But now, you know, and a lot of you guys were pretty observant and you took the time to really study your pears and fruits yesterday. So, you know, if you feel like, hey, maybe this is pretty similar to what I did. I just noticed we're not seeing the top of the pear like I had seen with the apple. Not a big deal, but this one may feel a little more repetitive. So something you can do to show more of the idea of a form is you could put those cross contour lines like we just talked about. So this is actually kind of going a little bit other direction, but then it has that illusion that it's round. Now these are going to get a little more complicated, you know, and you guys can skip around, you can decide not to work with some, you go at your own pace. It is not required to have the texture. Sometimes, you know, that is something we're going to be getting to as well. But if you see a texture or like a design element and you want to include that, you can. Like if you wanted to use little circles for the little bumps on the strawberry, you could do that if you wanted. Thinking about the angles of, let's say, a milk carton, this is going to be a little more of a geometric form. So I'm going to study this one. I think this is one you guys might have questions about. Think about the angles, the edges of your milk carton. So if I'm seeing this line here that's closest to me, that's what I would start with. And this is going to determine all of the other proportions on the other side as far as the height. So matching up kind of this angle, and then these lines are vertical. Same thing on this side, just kind of looking at that. The more you do this, the faster you will get, but feel free to use your pencil to kind of match that up. See a triangle here. Another angle here, these match. Angle here, top. Proportions are not exact to the picture, but that's because I'm kind of rushing it just to help you guys so you're not watching videos for too long. I noticed the inside, we're seeing some angles here with lighting, which is what we're going to get to with value a little bit later. But if you wanted to include that, you could. Now, as we go through these, like I said, they're going to get a little more complicated. You'll notice that if we look at a bowl head on, you know, we're going to see a circle at the top, but if we're seeing a bowl at an angle, this is where we're going to see an ellipse. So instead of a circle, start thinking about that as, yesterday I said more of an oval, but in a 3D form, you're probably going to think of it more as an ellipse. bringing the bowl back down, that round form. If you wanted to think of it as a circle, you could start this way and then curve this around. Okay, so a couple of these, I want to draw a little bit more complicated one, just because I think that'll be helpful to you guys, because you'll probably get to some of these and some of you may be like, what? All right, so for example, if you're working with the base, I usually start with kind of the main part of the body and then kind of mark. For example, let's say I start with the circle, it's going to be a sphere, but then just marking, this is, I'm going to bring the footing down, the body, main body part of the base, and then the lid. So I notice that it's, and you could put a center line as well, that'll help with things being a little more symmetrical. I'm gonna go a little faster with this, especially because I know students are going to start coming in, and I want to make sure to have this video ready for you guys. Let's see, cylinders. I can't see the top of it. I'm going to go a little faster than I normally would. All right. It's curved here. I used a cylinder, but now I'm going to curve it. Rounded. Pay attention to these ellipses. You're going to see a lot of rounding instead of lines being just straight across. And that's going to get that illusion of form. So here it's like on a base. And then you can go back and erase some of these lines that you want, or you can keep them to kind of show you the cross contour lines. It's rounded. Okay, all right. Hopefully this gave you some guidance. It may take you out of your comfort zone, but keep going with it. We're gonna use today, you know, and possibly tomorrow if you need it, okay? All right, let's see how you guys do.